Thank you. Now, the purpose of the summit is to explore strategies that help enhance the economic prosperity of the Southwest, Hispanic, and non-Hispanic communities, and in particular, improve the climate for entrepreneurs, is why we're all here. You will hear from Mexico, the Southwest, and throughout the U.S. discuss issues important to our economy and ultimately our prosperity. But before we're going on, we kind of want to talk about why we're all here. I actually kind of announce some of my my partners here today, and I'm going to say the name of a bunch of chambers. I'm going to ask you to hold your applause until I get them all named, and then we can kind of applaud them at the end. Is there any representatives here from the Latin Chamber of Commerce of Las Vegas? I have you all stand up. We have the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce, the Denver Hispanic Chamber, the Pueblo Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Black Chamber of New Mexico, the Arizona Black Chamber of Commerce, the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, the Kansas City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and some of these folks could not send a representative, but they were all very helpful in promoting the event. The U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of E-Commerce, the Latino Coalition, I just saw Alan, he just had to walk out, the New Mexico NFIB, and the New Mexico Business Coalition. Let's give all these folks a big hand for helping us do this. As well as our New Mexico chambers. Didn't want to forget them. Santa Fe Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Las Cruces Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Albuquerque West Chamber of Commerce, and our co-sponsor, the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce. Could you all please stand up? They did a great job. Now you all see a packet sitting in front of you. The packet, there's some really important stuff in this packet that's going to be helpful for you today. You have the agenda, and you will also see a list of bios. There's a panel abstract which talks about each panel. You'll see a list of bios, and I kind of want to warn you on those bios. They're very, very, very condensed, because some of the people we got speaking here today are some of the most accomplished people I've ever seen. So it was very, very difficult to really make those bios a little smaller. But go to our website, swbsummit.com, to see their actual bios themselves. You're also going to see on the left-hand side a contest entry survey. Now that survey is real important for us, and the reason why it's important, it tells us how we did, and it tells us how we can improve next time. But also there's going to be a benefit for you as well. If you fill that out, we're going to be doing a raffle for the reception tonight. You have a chance to win 2 prizes. The first prize is going to be a round-trip flight donated by the Albuquerque Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, a round-trip flight on Southwest Airlines, and you have to be here to win that prize. The second prize, the Libre Institute is going to donate a notepad or a notebook, and you don't have to be here for that, but that's why we need you to fill out the name and number so that we can contact you to get you that notepad. So I'm going to wish everybody good luck on that. So we're going to get this started here real soon. But before I do that, I want to bring up a good friend of mine, particularly Alex Romero. And when I used to be in the Chamber World for a long, long time, as long as my father. In fact, the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was founded in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So New Mexico has always had a great relationship with Hispanic chambers. And one of the best men I've met in New Mexico has been Alex Romero. And what I like to say, and you see his bio in there, and I normally don't like to read what's in there. I tell little stories. And when I first got involved with the Hispanic Chamber nationally, I used to come here to Albuquerque. And I said, Alex, the reason I'm coming here, I got to have some beef jerky. So whenever Alex and I would see each other nationally, his team would always bring some, and Alex, you always made me very, very happy. But we could not have done this without Alex and his team. So everybody, please, big hand to Alex Romero.
Good morning, everyone. So we're here. It's a great day. Thank you for being here. And Michael, thank you for putting this together and getting especially our Hispanic chambers. Yesterday, we spent the day sharing best practices, learning from each other. And I got to tell you, and Mayor, you'll appreciate this, the fact is that when you look at these chambers around the Southwest, these are all champions for what you champion in terms of small business right here in Albuquerque. And so I'll tell you, these are the overachievers of the 252 chambers, Hispanic chambers around the country. The Southwest Hispanic chambers are the overachievers, so we're pretty proud of everyone here today. So for those of you who are from outside of Albuquerque and our friends from, obviously from the Libre Institute, we welcome you to Albuquerque. We're delighted you're here. It was a wonderful time yesterday and learning more about the initiatives that you're working on here with the Institute, and also learning from our other chambers. So, you know, I wanted to mention, Michael, because I think you talked about the Articles of Incorporation for the USHCC, which would have been, let's see, 1976. So we're celebrating this month our 40th anniversary, and so we're pretty proud of the fact that about 2 years later, the USHCC actually filed their Articles of Incorporation in Santa Fe as well. So today we celebrate the success not only of our chamber, but we celebrate the success of small business, so we're pretty excited about that. I saw my chair, Anthony Trujillo, the owner of Holman's USA, out here earlier today. Cynthia, do you know if he's here? He was here, so I want to acknowledge him. He's a tremendous leader. The guy is unbelievable, and he's got us on our toes. And so I have the privilege of introducing a great friend of the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce, our mayor, Richard Berry. And so a couple of little stories. So when the mayor took office, I guess that would have been 2000 and the first thing he did, and we already knew the mayor from the legislature, but the first thing he did, actually before he took office, and he wasn't looking to get votes, he was genuinely interested, but he came over to the chamber and he says, look, here's what I'm doing, and I want you to know that I am committed to small business, I'm committed to Hispanic-owned business, and I'm committed to this Chamber of Commerce. And so from that very day, Mayor, you have kept true to your word, and you have been the champion, not only for our chamber, but for small business. And so one of the first things the mayor did when he took office is that he's a good collaborator, by the way. He got together with the city council and he says, look, let's create a small business regulatory commission. We need a body that looks at current laws, pending legislation, anything that might adversely impact business. And so he created the Small Business Regulatory Commission in place today. The commission has done a lot of great things in support of small business. So that was one of the first things. And then today, if we look back over the past almost 2 years, one of the neat things that the mayor has done, and if you read the paper this morning, you were looking at he's encouraging investment in Albuquerque, and he's been the champion of that. But I want to talk about the mayor and his team in economic development created Innovation Central. And I urge you to look at the city's website and go to that page because Innovation Central is really an entrepreneurial ecosystem right here in the downtown area. And I'll tell you, for us, especially as Hispanics, given our culture, and how we honor that culture and how we want our children to be able to stay here in Albuquerque and in New Mexico, one of the things that you've done with this concept is you're encouraging people, young, bright minds, to stay here in Albuquerque and to do the things that they need to do to start businesses here. Huge initiative, Mayor, and we're so proud of the work that you're doing in that regard. So without any more encouragement here, I just want to introduce and please help me welcome Mayor Berry, a personal friend as well as a champion for small business.
Gosh, Alex, that's short of my mom being here this morning. I don't know how I could get a better introduction than that. That was really nice, Alex. Alex is right. When I first decided that I may want to throw my hat in the ring to be the mayor of this great city, I think the first meeting I actually had, I went down and talked to Alex at the Hispano Chamber, and I just asked him point blank, you know, does a guy like me have something to offer here? And if I do, In your opinion, what does that look like? And we talked about backgrounds. We talked about a lot of different things in our city. So Alex has been a friend and a mentor, coach, sounding board, principal. I mean, you name it. In my world, he's really been a lot, and he has a lot to do with what we're doing in Albuquerque. So Alex, thanks for your leadership. Thanks for your friendship and your mentorship. We appreciate you very, very much. So I want to keep my comments rather short. I know you've got a wonderful panel of speakers today, but I just want to say this. You are absolutely doing the work that needs to be done, in my opinion. My background, briefly, went to the University of New Mexico. I was fortunate enough to, as a track and field athlete here, studied finance in a business school, got out of business school, and decided that I had opportunities to go to work for some larger national companies, Merrill Lynch in particular, or I could start a business and borrow $2,000 and see if I could make it. Well, as you all know, and you're promoting entrepreneurship and you're promoting self-sustainability and just really working on prosperity, the second road was not the easiest road. The second road actually was a harder road. And my son's 18. He's graduating from high school tomorrow. And he's getting ready to go to school. And we talk as a family about what the next 15, 20 years looks like for Jacob. And he asked me the other day point blank, he said, Dad, okay, so you went the entrepreneurial route, you didn't go the route where you went into corporate America. How would you gauge that? What would you give me from an advice standpoint? And I just had to tell him, even though we worked a lot of years for 80 hours a week to make $15,000 a year when we started, and even though I feel like the regulatory environment got to the point where it gets after you somewhat, and it didn't really set a playing field for success, and some of the frustrations that you have, and you're entrepreneurially minded here, you know what I'm talking about. I said I wouldn't trade it for the world. And that's the message that we're trying to send to our community. And we are, in my opinion, one of the most entrepreneurial places in this country. My wife, Maria, Anna Muller, who does a great job in Albuquerque working with minority-owned businesses, knows Maria, and as do the folks from the SBA that are here. She was an 8A contractor. She got to the point where she was one of the 500 largest Hispanic-owned businesses in the United States. And I always joke, I say I work for my wife, and when I was in business, but don't we all, really? And she absolutely is a rock star in our family. And I would see, as we worked in New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, Nevada, we were also general contractors. We were also licensed in California. Some years we did a lot of work for the public sector. Some years we didn't do very much at all. We do trucking terminals, restaurants, shopping centers around the Southwest United States. I got a chance to see what this region looks like, and I got a chance to see the husbands and wives, the men and women, the people that are out there struggling to really start and grow businesses, to create good jobs for folks, not just in New Mexico, but around our region. And I just ran into so many good people over and over and over again. And the Hispanic population in New Mexico, in my opinion, well, for centuries, has led the way. And so we've got great examples, and we have great opportunities. We have challenges. I tell people a lot of times when I'm talking around the country about some of the initiatives that we have, that Albuquerque today looks like America is going to look from a demographic standpoint in about 20 to 25 years. So we have a leadership role to play here, and we're doing it the right way. And we are concentrating on entrepreneurship. When we talk about economic mobility, we talk about helping people prosper. This whole equation of everything from helping our youngest children to helping them graduate from school to helping them succeed. This idea of entrepreneurship, independence, self-reliance, it all comes down to almost everything that we talk about. So I really commend you, Michael, what you're doing here. I commend the Libre Institute for what you're doing. I know your panelists that are sitting up here, several of your panelists, and Carla's here. I know Marita's here as well. You've got some great that our Lieutenant Governor is going to speak with you at lunch. But you're just absolutely doing the work that we need you to do. We tell people this all the time, and I'm not shy to say this. We just can't do everything in government. We need you to step up and do the things that we can't or shouldn't or aren't the best at doing. And so I just think that, you're just doing wonderful work. And to John and the whole group here from the SBA, thanks for what you're doing in our community. We appreciate you very much. So congratulations. Thank you. Let us know what Albuquerque can do as we start to build this ecosystem to augment our government sector here. As we start to build this private sector, we're trying to do it in the right way. We think you have a lot of lessons you can teach us. And so as you come together and come up with best practices, please get with Alex, get with our groups here, get with Anna, get with John. Share those with us so that we can take those out to our community and we can all, as a region, prosper.
Thank you, Mary. Really appreciate that. Before I go, I'm going to talk about the Libre Institute. It's a great organization. I'm so proud to work for this organization. And what the mayor was talking about is kind of what we're about. We want to talk about the economics and how it affects the Hispanic community. But more importantly, we want to talk about the strategies for being successful and talk about how less government is important for entrepreneurs. Talk about the rule of law, why that's so important. Talk about the importance of a sound money supply, property rights. And these are things that the Libre Institute wants to start promoting and actually start talking about with the Hispanic community and the non-Hispanic community, because that really is the best way to succeed. So we're going to have some conversations here today. So one of the things I definitely want to have everybody think about the social media. It's so important. So if you want to Twitter, the hashtag is going to be SWBIZ. Hashtag SWBIZ. So Twitter and tell them how things are going here. The Libre Institute Twitter handle is at the Libre Institute. At the Libre Institute. So be sure and talk about that. And so we're going to get the conversation started here with some of our panels. And we're going to talk about, we have a lot of things important we're going to talk about here today. How energy is impacting businesses. That's our first panel. We're also going to be talking about the importance of trade, particularly trade with Mexico. Then our panel after that, we're going to be talking about the importance of regulations, and people don't realize how that really affects businesses or other organizations. In our last panel, we're going to talk about business opportunities in gaming, in aerospace, in pipeline construction. So it's going to be a very well-rounded panel today. It's going to be an excellent day. We have some great keynote speakers at luncheon. I want to recognize Dan Garza. He's one of our keynotes here today. He's the executive director. Dan, you want to stand and be recognized? We have Coach Jim White of McFarland USA is going to speak today. He's a very inspirational speaker. And, of course, Lieutenant Governor John Sanchez is going to speak here today. So I'm going to get this started and bring up the first panel. First of all, I'm going to have the first panel, again, is going to be on energy. Now, the energy industry is critical to the U.S. and Southwest economies. The industry has a large impact on jobs as well as taxes paid to local and national governments. Additionally, energy affects our everyday lives, cost of transportation, the cost of heating our homes and our businesses. Energy production and policies also impact our national security. These energy experts today will explore these topics and more on today's panel. I'm going to actually bring up Jose Perez. Jose is the president of Hispanics in Energy. He's been doing this for quite a while, and he's got great experience in that. He's going to be our moderator today. He's going to introduce the panel. Let's get started. Thank you. Jose?
I promised Michael that I would stay on time, and so I'm going to set my little timer here. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jose Perez, and I'm the Chairman and CEO of Hispanics in Energy. I come via California from Sacramento. However, Hispanics in Energy is a national organization. It's only 3 years old, and it was started because we looked at the energy sector and what it was doing around the country and around the world. And we discovered that in the U.S. at that time, it was about a $1.4 trillion business annually. But when you took a look at who runs the business, who makes the decisions, who's involved in the business, we found that despite the growth of the Hispanic community in the country, which is now a ethnic minority group, that there was very little presence by way of inclusion in either jobs or in business. And so 3 years ago, we formed Hispanics in Energy. Since that time, we've done policy summits around energy policy issues. The last one we did was in Washington, D.C. We have one coming up in October in Washington, D.C., and the focus there basically is to look at the broader energy policy that the country is considering out of Congress, and then try to merge our interests to make sure that there's inclusion and diversity in some of those ideas. So we're very delighted to be here. Last year we did an 8-city tour on energy jobs. We started in Chicago and we traveled around the country. One stop was here in New Mexico, and in Colorado. So we got a really good idea of what the implications are in this particular region. In Colorado and in New Mexico, there's a San Juan Basin that affects the shale industry, and it's basically natural gas. And here in New Mexico, southeast and across the Texas border, there's a Permian Basin. And when you take a look at how many billions barrels of oil that are available, or gas, natural gas, BTUs out of these basins, you realize the economic impact, because today's value for a barrel of oil is about $60. It used to be $100. So you do the math. What we've done is we've taken a look at the stakeholder groups out there. And some of the key stakeholder groups around the country that we've partnered up with include the Minorities in Energy program out of the Department of Energy, and we have a memorandum of understanding with those folks. The American Association of Blacks in Energy, a key group that's been around for about 37 years, and they basically have been incubating us in terms of how to grow the Hispanic community influence in the energy sector. And then the Edison Electric Institute, which are about 500 utility companies around the country, and the American Petroleum Institute. So some of our co-collaborators are very influential nationally, but when you take a look at this particular region, Colorado, New Mexico, and going into West Texas, the energy opportunities are just really profound. And I can get into a whole lot of reasons on why we need to get involved, but the real reason we're here is to hear from some incredible experts that Michael Barrera and the Institute have been able to gather to be here with us today. And these are our members of very distinguished individuals that are sitting up here. They include Carlos Rodriguez, who is via Denver, Colorado, and he's going to elaborate a little bit about some of the initiatives, the policy issues that he's been involved with. We have Carla Sontag and Marita Noon from New Mexico, who are going to be sharing with you some of the aspects that they've been working with. And so what I'd like to do is start this panel, give them a few minutes to talk about their ideas, and then I have some questions that I'm going to generate, some discussion, and then we're going to open it up for questions that you may have of them. These are individuals that are leading the charge, if you will, informing some of the discussion that goes on in the policy arena around energy. And every community should be involved, in particular the small business community, because we're talking about opportunities that may be available or non-existent depending on how those outcomes are. And so why don't we go ahead and start with Carla. Carla, if you could give us about 3 minutes of remarks.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Carla Sontag. I'm the president and founder of the New Mexico Business Coalition. I started this group in 2009 really out of frustration with government and regulation. I felt that we could do better. So we represent business. We also represent individuals. And together we are making a difference. What we do primarily is focus on education. We educate on policy, on legislation, and on elected officials. We hold elected officials accountable so that when voters go to the polls, they know who they're voting for and what these people have stood for. We're very strong on energy because without energy, it's a little bit difficult to power our businesses and our homes. So we have always had a focus on that, on what it means in the extractive industries and how energy is used, and why it's important that when we have the more radical people on the side that go against energy production and use, that we have a voice to balance that. That is our focus, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you.
Okay, Carlos?
All right. Thank you, Jose, for having us up here. Yeah, Carlos Rodriguez. I'm from Coloradans for Responsible Energy Development in Denver, Colorado. And really, you know, what CRED is all about is it's educating the public, as Carlos said, about energy issues impacting the state, safe and responsible oil and gas development, and specifically fracking, hydraulic fracturing. You know, all over the country, this is a hot button issue. What does it mean? How is it impacting our communities, our public health, our environment? And in Colorado, very similarly to New Mexico, where it supports over 100,000 jobs, it is a critical component of public policy and of what makes our state so valuable, and so our main effort is to really start at the grassroots level, educating the public about these energy issues, and really enables our program to engage the public, elected officials, business owners, the community at large, to have a pro-energy discussion, create relationships in the community to further that dialogue, and then to really find what it is in the community that are most concerned about, finding ways to bring those policy issues to the forefront, and then working with our electeds to solve those issues and to keep our industry, our oil and gas industry in Colorado as strong and operating as safely and responsibly as possible. But at its root, CRED is all about educating the public, about providing a base of understanding and facts, so that the public can then make educated decisions about such a critical and crucial industry.
Okay. Ready?
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you all today. I'm the executive director, as my little sign here says, of the Citizens Alliance for Responsible Energy and the companion advocacy organization, Energy Makes America Great, Inc. The original organization, the Citizens Alliance for Responsible Energy, was founded in 2005 here in New Mexico, and I became the executive director in 2007. At the time, our energies were focused primarily on the state of New Mexico. But as I got engaged in the issues, I realized that these were much bigger than New Mexico. And frankly, I was working way too hard to stop at the border. And so I began to look at issues on a little more national scope. As I like to tell people, at the time, we had an anti-energy governor and a pro-energy president. But then things flipped, and we now have a pro-energy governor and an anti-energy president. And so I focus my attentions more on national issues, although I still have a priority to those things that are going on in New Mexico. And in the next week or two, I plan to write a column on the situation at the San Juan Generating Station and the new coal deal, and what is the PRC going to do with that, and so forth. I deal with both liquid fuels and electricity, transportation fuels, power generation, transmission, all of those kind of issues, but particularly how the politics of energy have an economic impact. That's kind of my unique niche. And as Carla and Carlos both mentioned, their goal is to educate the public, and so is mine. Because I believe when all people know about energy is flipping the switch on the wall or putting gas in their car, they don't make wise choices when they vote. They're susceptible because they don't understand the role that energy plays in America. And everywhere I speak, and I have them for you today, I give out bumper stickers that say, "Energy makes America great," so that you can have just a subtle reminder for everybody in the car behind you about the role that energy plays in America. Because when people don't understand that, they can easily be hoodwinked by the fairy tale that we can power this country on neon, butterflies, rainbows, and pixie dust. And so I have a very specific plan of how I educate the public. And first thing is, I write a weekly column that's on online sites all over the country, plus in many different newspapers. I then do dozens of radio interviews each month, and I speak at a lot of basically anywhere I'm invited to speak when I have the topic of energy. The bottom line is I like to talk about energy longer than anyone wants to listen, as you can probably tell. Thank you.
So you see, we have an exceptional group here. They're really into working these issues in their areas. And so with that, I want to piggyback a little bit on what Marita was just sharing with you, and that is that there is a global strategy around energy, but it has a tremendous local impact. Around the planet, there's an incredible demand or growth that's experiencing in the energy sector. You've got countries like China and India that are developing so quickly now that they're in position to import energy because they don't have their own abilities to supply their own demands. And so consequently, the North America region has an opportunity essentially to help fill some of that demand. And so there is this Canadian, American, and Mexican strategy now to essentially move into an area that a part of the world that doesn't quite like America very much, the Middle East, is basically competing with us now. And so we said, okay, these new resources, so now it's a question of how do we position our hemisphere to compete against some of these interest groups that don't like us very much. So from that perspective, Marita, you mentioned coal. Can you give us, and if we do accept it, what is the environmental impact or the cost impact for small businesses? Do you have an opinion on that?
That's for me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, it most certainly will have an impact on small businesses because coal is our most abundant energy supply. We have hundreds of years worth of coal available in the United States. The power generation industry has learned to produce electricity much more cleanly. In fact, the American Lung Association recently came out with a report that gave the Four Corners area of New Mexico, where we have 2 coal-fired power plants, they came out with that they have one of the cleanest air qualities in the country. And this was something that I recall they came out with again about 5 years ago that recently just came out with those same reports. So when you hear the term dirty coal, it's a misnomer. It may have been in the past, and it may be the way they're doing it in China, but because they don't have the restrictions and regulations that we have. And yes, America did need to clean up our use of coal. But you know what? Through our amazing ingenuity and technology, we have done that. With coal's abundance, it also produces the lowest cost electricity in this country. And it's a stable supply. As there was a report came out about 2 days ago that the price of natural gas is going up because more utilities are using it as their fuel supply, as coal has lost political favor. And it is a political issue. And so, but coal remains it's a steady supply where natural gas is going up. So when we look at it, the main impact is the price of electricity, and of course that impacts all businesses.
Okay. And Carla, tell us a little bit about the energy industry's very important role plays in the state of New Mexico from an economic perspective, the number of jobs, the payroll it generates, the tax base.
You know, we talk about this a lot in the oil and gas industry and other extractive industries, but if you look just at oil and gas, they currently employ over 105,000 people in New Mexico. Can you just imagine for a minute if we lost that many jobs? New Mexico's in a difficult place as it is, and so we need to keep these people employed, and they are producing resources that we desperately need. Their annual payroll in that industry is $5.4 billion. They're very well paid. But remember, that money circulates into our economy, and it goes to other people creating jobs. There are, in the last year, fiscal year 2014, that industry alone produced 35% of the state's budget. This state could not function without the oil and gas industry. That was $2.1 billion in our state budget. And the reason that's important is we've got people that want to shut it down. Carlos is going to talk about fracking, but in New Mexico, we've actually had groups get, in Mora County, for example, get that city to ban all fracking. You ban fracking, you ban oil and gas. And that spread. Then that concept went to Santa Fe, and there were other cities looking at it. It was overturned in the Mora area. The court said they can't do that. But it's a critical issue that we face as we deal with these environmentalists. And we have to be cognizant of what their goal is, and we have to be the voice of reason on the other side, fighting for these industries to
Amen.
keep oil and gas production going. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Very significant
Can I add one
impact.
thing for Carla, or ask
Absolutely,
you? I
can.
understood that there were going to be some layoffs in the state of New Mexico this summer due to the lack of funding from the lower price of oil and gas. Is that accurate?
That is, we've seen estimates that we could lose 2,000 jobs, but right now we have not seen a net loss. What's happening is, while some of the companies are pulling back, and where we're losing jobs or activity is in exploration, but the extraction is still moving forward. And so what has happened currently is that as these companies have cut back, there is other companies that are stepping up because they know the price is going to come back. So those people that have been laid off have been able to find another job. We don't know that that's going to last. If the oil price doesn't come up soon, we could lose about 2,000 jobs in that industry over the next several months.
Yeah, very important thing to keep an eye on, because it's a blessing for the future if the opportunities continue, but it certainly could curtail those visions of opportunity if the industry does experience a reduction. But Carlos, you're up in Colorado with very significant energy development. Colorado is one of the leading states in energy, and as we got to know it more closely, it's just phenomenal how much development is going on in that state. But clearly there's been an issue of folks just not knowing what fracking is. Can you tell us what is fracking?
Sure. Fracking is pretty simply is an extraction process, usually between 1 mile to 2 miles below the water table, where using a combination of water and sand and essentially household chemicals, we go into shale rock or whatever the rock formation happens to be, and using high pressure water and sand, split that rock open, which essentially then allows the sand to kind of stick in those little fissures, those little fractures, which then allows the petroleum, the natural gas, whatever the resource happens to be, to escape back through the well. Something that Carla mentioned that really is beginning to take hold in Colorado as far as fracking is concerned are the local bans and local moratoriums. And really what CRED has been very successful at over the last couple of years is using a combination of grassroots and grass tops community movements to battle those local moratoriums. You know, Colorado facing a ban would be looking at a loss of about 68,000 jobs, over $500 million to our local economy as far as taxes and revenue, taxes. So, you know, that really is something that keeps a close eye on. We have lots of different components of the program that battle those local issues. Activating the community through our local energy organizations, our canvassing efforts last year for the ballot initiative saw us knock on 875,000 doors in support of the oil and gas industry. So lots of components to the CRED campaign that have us in the community, really making sure that the community knows how devastating an impact these moratoriums and these bans could have.
And can you tell us any word on the success of CRED to try to get information out to the public on your strategies, on your perspectives?
Yeah. So CRED has been successful in pushing public support for fracking. Right now, we're at about 68%. We're hoping to have that edge over 70%. Through our different through the different components of our program, but that is probably the most important component of what we're trying to do at CRED is really getting the facts out into the public. That's kind of one of our mission statements is get the facts first before you make any decisions, before you head to the polls.
Yeah, our experience in California is very similar, and that is that most of the public doesn't really understand the business, but when they get into it and they get into the facts, the science behind it, there really is a safe way to do it. And unfortunately, some of the noise out there does create some concern over the environment that sometimes is misplaced. And so, I really commend what CRED is doing in Colorado in trying to reach out and educate the public about what it really means, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so clearly, he's a great resource, and as this panel is about getting straight answers about what the industry is doing. There are some issues. There's some parts of the industry that do make mistakes, but then the burden falls on the entire industry to take the blame. And so, but there are safe ways of doing it, and that's been proven scientifically. So fracking is clearly something that needs to be continued. There is an open dialogue with respect to earthquakes. There's some conflicting information out there about what's going on in Texas. But, overall in California, the experience has been that there are safe ways of actually fracking and extracting that resource from the earth. Marita, there are several national policy issues that are being discussed that affect small business owners. Can you elaborate on some of those?
Yes, and certainly fracking is one of those. And I wanted to just add, you were mentioning California. I was involved in the fight against Measure P in the Santa Barbara area in California, which was soundly trounced. And so sometimes I think the noise that we hear from the opposition, because they're very vocal, it does not accurately represent the general public's viewpoint. But one of the big issues right now on a national policy level is President Obama's Clean Power Plan, which will essentially shut down roughly 300 coal-fired power plants throughout the country and force the replacement with a lot of renewables, which are easily proven to be far more expensive. In fact, in the state of New Mexico, the PRC commissioners tell me that the majority of the recent rate increases for electricity in this state are because of the forced implementation of green energy through the Renewable Portfolio Standard, which the legislature passed, and I believe, Carla, was it 06 or 07 that they passed that? Seven. I knew it was in that ballpark. But because of that, PNM has been required to put in a lot more renewable, which has been much more expensive, and obviously that impacts all business owners and individual households as well. But the Clean Power Plan is going to be extremely costly and punish especially manufacturing and energy-intensive industries through that cost increase. And so that's something that Senator Mitch McConnell from Kentucky is encouraging, as the Senate Majority Leader, encouraging a lot of states to push back on the Clean Power Plan, and the Supreme Court is looking at it as well. So hopefully that will be dialed back, because it's a major national policy issue. But the other one, as Carlos mentioned, is fracking. There is a big push from the environmental side to have a national policy on fracking. And of course, what they want is basically an anti-fracking position. And I believe that the reason they're so opposed to fracking is not fracking in and of itself, because as Carlos said, it's merely a drilling technique. But I believe the average American understands what Sarah Palin made popular, which is drill, baby, drill. Drill here, drill now. They understand that more drilling means lower prices, and we've certainly seen that in the last 6 months. We have an abundant supply. It means lower prices, and that's helpful for everybody. So the antis can't come out and be against drilling because the public understands that. But they can come out with a term, fracking, which sounds like something you're not supposed to say in polite company, and they can give it its own definition because the public doesn't understand it. In October 2013, a group called Environment America, and I encourage you to look this up, Environment America came out with a report called Fracking by the Numbers, and in it they give fracking their own definition. They say industry likes to use a more narrow definition, but we prefer to use definition that impacts the entire process. And basically, they say it's everything from permitting to production, and they define that as fracking. So that's part of that national strategy they have. So those are two big issues.
Okay, great.
Something else I'd like to share. Jose, you talked about battling, public misconception about the oil and gas industry and hydraulic fracturing in particular, is that, this is not a new technology. We've been safely, responsibly, fracking in this country for, over 60 years. Over 90% of wells today are fracked. That's over 1 million wells across the country. So I think that, in talking about safe and responsible energy development, that's something that we kind of keep in the forefront of the discussion, is that, our U.S. oil and gas companies are continually making investments. Since 2000, I think it's over $2 trillion in capital investments that the industry has put right back into our American economy. And I know that that's something that Libre really takes to heart, is talking about economic freedom. So those are things that we also need to be discussing. One item that I'd like to highlight about fracking is a technology that is on the newer side, which is called directional drilling, which is used in conjunction with fracking to access resources that we were previously unable to retrieve. So a lot of different elements to the conversation that I suggest.
No question. Again, our California experience is that there have been a few incidences with smaller oil companies that, quite frankly, don't have enough resources. They try to cut corners, and so there have been some issues, especially when it comes to wastewater and so there has been some. But if overall the industry is very responsible, but it's the big guys that have enough resources to make sure that it's done correctly, where we find the success stories. And so generally, no question about it, but some of the small companies that are trying to emulate what the big companies do experience some mistakes. And so those are the ones that tend to, create these tidal waves of discussion that sometimes, just kind of filters the entire perspective. But I think it's, again, just a reminder that there are some issues, but overall, it can be done responsibly. If we can move over to Marita and have her talk about New Mexico and Colorado. We have such a diverse opportunity for renewable energy out here. Yeah, we've got a tremendous resource with oil and natural gas and coal. However, because of the incredible sun that you guys get out here in New Mexico and in Colorado, if you can tell us what is happening in the renewable energy space.
Well, it's an interesting question because this is a real transitional time in the renewable energy space because it's been around long enough now that people have seen the cost increases. You know, it's great to say, oh, the wind is free and the sun is free, but converting them to electricity is an extremely expensive process. So nationally right now, we're seeing a push towards repealing or dialing back or putting a pause on renewable energy mandates, such as the Renewable Portfolio Standard that we mentioned earlier that New Mexico passed in 2007. More than half of the states in the country have a Renewable Portfolio Standard that mandates a certain amount of renewable energy. Last year, Ohio put what they call a pause on their renewable portfolio standard. And just so you know, in general, most of the states, it's a little different. California's more extreme, Jose, because you know they always like to be, you know, off the cliff on things. But in most cases, the renewable portfolio standard said that the utility companies are going to have a mix of energy that is 10% renewable by 2010, 15% renewable by 2015, 20% renewable by 2020. And that varies slightly state by state, but that's a broad picture to help you understand that. So last year, 2014, for example, Ohio put a pause and said, we're going to stop right here with where we are right now and we're not going to do any more. Earlier this year, West Virginia became the first state in the country to totally repeal their renewable portfolio standard. Texas has ended their renewable portfolio standard. Oklahoma is looking at doing something similar. Kansas is looking at doing something similar. There was legislation, which Carla can probably address more specifically, in the state of New Mexico. It did not pass the House, did not pass the Senate, that would have dialed back the renewable portfolio standard as well. So it's a real transition time in the renewable industry. Well, it seems like in the Southwest, we should be the leaders in wind and solar, especially in New Mexico, where we have so much of both. But it comes right down to a cost and an economic factor and a reliability factor. And that's a key thing to realize, is that the wind and the sun are not available 24/7. They're not available on demand. They're not what we call dispatchable. So while PNM, for example, may be required to have 20% renewable energy by 2020, they still have to have the coal or natural gas backup so that when you want to flip your switch on your lights, they go on whether the wind is blowing or the sun is shining.
Carla, your perspective?
Yes, there was a law that they attempted to pass this year to stop further mandates on renewable energy. Right now, the law that was passed in 2007 was later modified. So New Mexico is one that's 20% by 2020. And if you look, since that law was passed, our electric rates have increased 32%. The vast majority of that, not all of it, but the vast majority of that is due to the renewable portfolio standard. Now, what happened in the legislature, well, that's New Mexico legislature, and once we got it past the House, it couldn't pass the Senate. But we have a problem here. By passing a law like that, the utility companies have pretty much met the standard of 15% by 2015 and are well on their way to developing the 20% by 2020. If we stop that, or if we roll it back, we have the Public Regulation Commission, who will then not allow them, most likely, to recover their costs that they've already invested in that renewable energy. So it is a very precarious situation for utilities to have that rolled back in New Mexico at this time. If they could recover those costs of investment, it wouldn't be a problem. But it is a problem. And so we've got to be very careful in New Mexico in particular, because of our commission, in how we stop or roll that back. Even though it's been detrimental to us and our rates, we've got to remember the health of the utility company is critical to their continued operation, and we can't just stop them mid-track and tell them, well, great that you put that investment in, but you can't recover it. They're regulated, they can't recover costs unless they're allowed. regulatory process.
So Carla, can you tell us what the position is of the utilities regarding the policies? Do they actually stand up and speak out and express concerns? And if so, which companies tend to do that?
Well, they did not have to do anything this time because we knew that it wasn't going to pass the Senate. Had it gone through the Senate, all of them, all of our three utilities and the co-ops as well, probably would have, well, I can tell you they would have stood up and expressed concern over that. Because when a law is passed in the legislature, it then goes for regulatory control at our Public Regulation Commission. It's just across the street, but sometimes it's a world apart in how those two agencies look at what they're going to do with the laws. And so they didn't have to take that stand. We knew it wasn't going to pass, but it is, like I said, a very precarious situation for them, and they would have had to voice that concern because we already know how our Public Regulation Commission reacts to things like that.
Well, since we're talking about the cost of doing business, which if you're a restaurant owner or a small business person, you're using a lot of energy, that means that your cost is going up because of some of these policies. And if you can just imagine what that means for residential folks who see a higher electricity bill, are there any ratepayer groups that organize around expressing their opinions over an increasing rate of increasing rates?
The New Mexico Business Coalition is very outspoken about that, and then there is the New Mexico Utility Shareholders Alliance that I'm also involved in, and that's a group that represents shareholders of electric and gas companies operating in the state. And while they're shareholders, you would think that they would just carry the banner and say, yeah, raise the rates because that means more money to shareholders. But we don't, because, we're also the ratepayers. And so we're looking for a balance there where the company can make a good return on investment, but ratepayers aren't going to be hit too aggressively hard when they get their bills. And that balance is critical in New Mexico. Our poverty level is so high. We've got to be very cognizant of these rate increases for those people that can't afford what they're already paying. And that's why that renewable portfolio standard and some of the other legislation that has passed in the state has been highly detrimental to this state with our high poverty level. And we've got to be more cognizant of that going in, that we don't put these people in a situation where they're choosing between their medication, their electric bill, their heating bill, or their food.
Okay. Carlos, going back to Colorado, can you share with us what you anticipate as some of the issues that are going to need public education for the balance of 2015 and 2016? Can you forecast that for us?
I'll try. I won't try to look too far into the future. It'll probably be, in my estimation, the same measures that we saw last year in Colorado. When you're talking about a drilling well, we have a term that's called a setback, and that's the limit, the distance between a production site, a well, and a structure, a high occupation building, a school, a home, a business, whatever it happens to be. Currently in Colorado, that setback limit is at 500 feet. Now, there are groups out there that would like to push that to 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet, which actually eliminates the industry from a vast majority of the state, from operating in a vast majority of the state. Another ballot measure that we saw last year that will more than likely be resurfacing is looking at severance taxes. We have these communities that are looking to ban fracking, ban oil and gas development in their communities. However, they still would like to partake in the financial windfall, and they would still like to essentially get their piece of the pie. So looking on the pro-industry side of things, that is a measure that I could see coming back up. But yeah, the setbacks will probably be resurfacing, and the severance taxes as well, the severance tax issue as well.
Carla, New Mexico's looked at that too, haven't they? The taking money from the states or the counties that don't want fracking?
Yes, we had legislation in this last session that they said, well, if you want to stop fracking and you want to stop oil and gas production, then the state will stop funding you and they'll stop giving you your portion of the budget. It made a point with them, although we still, the people that are here today, are the voice that our elected officials need to hear. Because you get this, and we've got the other side. They don't think about the consequences. They just think about what they want. They want to control energy so they can control us. And we've got to be more vocal. We've got to let elected officials know, because if you think about these people and their position, they are responsible to their constituents. And if they're only hearing to that very vocal group that Marita was talking about that makes a lot of noise, they think that is the message. They think that is representative of the opinion out there, and it's not. We are the majority, but we've got to let them know.
Which, from my perspective, since we have so many business leaders here, trade association leaders, do you see a diverse group of trade association leaders carrying the message to these policymakers about having a responsible energy policy? Do you see the Hispanic chambers, the African American chambers, the NABO groups, do you see them stepping up to the plate? And I'd like to focus that on New Mexico. So, Carla?
We do see some of that, but not enough. And on July 1st, we're going to open a new initiative, and we're having an energy summit. Congressman Steve Pierce will be our keynote speaker, and then we're going to run a panel similar to this. But we're going to invite all of these groups, because the focus of that panel is going to be to start the education process about how these very liberal environmentalists are affecting policy. And we're going to share with you their network, where their funding comes from, how they are beating us at this whole issue of energy production and energy use. And so we want every group that's here today to be there at that summit. It's going to be very important. We're going to open up very frank discussion, and we're going to start rolling out a new initiative to fight back against these people that want to control us through our energy use, because we can do it. We outnumber them many times over. So I hope you'll join us so that we can have that discussion, take it back to your groups, and let's change the conversation in this state and in this nation.
Yeah. Your thought?
Yeah, I want to add to what Carla was saying on that we outnumber them. There's some very exciting polling, I believe, that's taken place in the last few months. I'll start with the Pew Research Center every January does a public priorities poll. And they give in their polling a list of 20 or so issues and say, where do you think government should be focused? Repeatedly, for example, climate change comes in at the absolute bottom of the list. This year, the only thing that they cared less about than climate change was global trade, which of course is what the president is pushing right this moment. And it's the only thing the public cares less about. Another interesting piece of polling, Keystone Pipeline. 70% of the people in America support the Keystone Pipeline, and only those who oppose it, which is like, really strongly oppose it, is like 20%. So there's some in the middle there. I realize 70 and 20 don't add up. But those who oppose Keystone Pipeline, for example, are those who self-identify in the poll as strongly liberal. So that means the rest of the population is not with them on these issues. Another piece of polling came out recently. Gallup did a poll, I believe it was in March, and I personally find this to be one of the most encouraging things. Again, it's a climate change poll, but realize that all of these humans walked the earth long before we were burning fossil fuels. But when you realize that, Gallup started polling on climate change in 1989. In 1989, they asked how many are worried or very worried about global warming, because we didn't use the term climate change in 1989, but since the planet has stopped warming, we switched to climate change. But in 1989, 63% were worried or very worried about global warming. We have been the recipients over the last 25 years of the most extensive and the most expensive public relations campaign to sell the public on global warming. It is a part of every level of education, every government agency. We have a parade of celebrities who support it. And guess what the new polling shows? After 25 years of the most extensive and most expensive public relations campaign, how many people are worried or very worried about climate change? Less than 25 years ago. Now, admittedly, it's still over 50%. It's 50, I believe it's 52%, but it's still over 50%, but it's less than it was 25 years ago. So when you add up all those polling kind of numbers together, I find it's very encouraging. As Carla said, there's more who don't support that narrative than do. But because they're very noisy, they lead you to believe that they are the majority. And one other thing I wanted to tag on that, Carlos mentioned fracking. The reason fracking's become such an issue is that when fracking is combined with directional drilling, as you mentioned, which it's been done successfully since about 2006, 2008 ballpark, where it's been combined to be commercially successful, that is what has created the new American energy abundance. And the new American energy abundance has scared the bejeebers out of the anti-fossil fuel crowd, because they had this paradigm all set up that we were running out of oil, and that changed. And so they've had to kind of find that demon, and that is fracking.
Carla, you had mentioned that on July 1st, you guys will be having your energy summit, and with that, you're hoping to launch sound like a grassroots initiative, kind of bringing the public together. One of the grassroots movements that CRED works closely with is called Vital for Colorado, and that's a collection of 35,000 Coloradans, business owners, chamber leaders, elected officials who have come together to say, we support safe and responsible energy development, we support fracking, we're opposed to bans and moratoriums. And it's a grassroots movement on the as far as the energy discussion as I've seen. So I think that's a great step, and I really am hopeful for that. It made me happy to hear you say that you guys were going to be launching that.
Well, thank you, and I think we can learn a lot from Colorado. Colorado's had some real challenges, and you've seen things changing as a result of the work that they're doing, and that's what we need to see in New Mexico, because we've got some real issues here, and one that I will talk about, I hope, shortly, but we've got to change the conversation. We've got to take it back. We need to control the conversation, not be controlled by the conversation.
And so from that perspective, I had a great discussion with Carlos last night about, the industry and some of the challenges that are going on. And we all know that America's demographics, its human complexion is changing dramatically. It's not like it used to be 20 years ago. Now you got 52 million Latinos in the United States. You got a very large African American community. People from all over the world are coming here. Half of our population is women. We take a look at the business component, which a lot of you lead. I would like just to see a show of hands from the trade association leaders. How many of your members have a contract, a business relationship with the energy industry in your region? If I could just have a show of hands. How many of you would like to see some? Okay, so part of the challenge I think that we've seen from Hispanics in Energy is that somehow the industry and the communities need to better connect and to open up those opportunities, not only for business, but for jobs, and really just make it a little bit broader. So from that perspective, I'd like to ask the panel members, what would they recommend to you as trade association leaders on how to better position your members to get business opportunities in the energy sector? And if we can start with Carla.
I think networking is a really important option, and when you participate with your groups, hopefully your groups can start bringing in the energy industry. In the New Mexico Business Coalition, we're very well covered there. We have a lot of people from oil and gas and other extractive industries, and from that you'll see that there are many business opportunities that grow from that. These people need every service that's provided in this room and probably a lot more. They need marketing, they need trucking, they need management, they need PR. And if you have any business opportunities in that, you need to be with these people, talking to them and networking. Because if they don't know you, they're not going to contract with you. So it's very important that we start bringing them in, because as an industry, a lot of times the extractive industries remain unto themselves. And that's why we're pulling them into the New Mexico Business Coalition, and I would encourage you to bring them into your organizations as well for networking opportunities to spread the wealth, so to speak, with other businesses, because when business does well, we all do well, and it creates jobs. It will lessen the tax base for all of us individually. It actually will help with our electric rates, because the more people we have on the system, they can bring the rate down per person. So we've got to do this. We've got to work together. We're all one community, and we need to make it feel that way and be more inclusive.
Carlos?
You know, I would suggest not trying to reinvent the wheel. You know, look in your community, look at those established relationships and those businesses that have been working with the industry for many years, and look to your peers. How have you developed this relationship over time? Look at those established routes into the industry and use those connections to develop business for your own organization, for your own community. Something else that I'd like to kind of highlight is that, you know, supporting and being part of the oil and gas industry doesn't always have to be a producer or someone driving a truck or working at a fracking site. There are so many other types of businesses and industries that support energy production. The restaurants that feed our workers. There are just really, if you can, almost any industry can support energy development if you look at it in the right way. So, but I just suggest and getting some advice from them on how they've been able to do it and sustain those relationships.
Carla and Carlos have adequately covered that, but I have one small thing to add. August is the Independent Petroleum Association of New Mexico, a booth, a trade show booth. And so for those of you who are here representing a group that would like to say, how do I find these people? How do I get in touch with them? That is an excellent opportunity to have a booth at the Independent Petroleum Association of New Mexico's annual meeting, which is coming up. I believe it's in Albuquerque. It usually is in August. And that's a way to connect with those folks.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the audience to ask some questions, and I'm going to pick on a friend of mine, Edelisa from Las Cruces, New Mexico, who heads the chamber there. Last night we were having a conversation regarding, the incredible opportunity that's in southeast New Mexico in terms of the oil and gas business opportunities. And Edelisa, can you introduce yourself and talk about what your chamber is doing in that arena? Okay, thank you. And we were joined by Deidre Garcia, who heads up the Denver, Colorado Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And Deidre, you were involved in the Energize Denver last year, actually towards some of the sites in northern Colorado. And so if you can just introduce yourself and make a few comments about the energy sector.
Gosh, that's a tall order. I'm Deidre Garcia. I'm in the Hispanic Chamber in Denver. Carlos and Craig's organization are my members. And, you know, energy has left its footprint in Colorado in a really significant way in the last year. You know, it did start with the ballot initiatives. It kind of brought it to the forefront because industry had to jump in and take some defensive measures, and most of us just kind of took the sector for granted, even though, depending on who you listen to, somewhere between 40 and 45% of the real estate in downtown Denver is occupied by this industry. We all just kind of took it for granted until we thought that there might be the prospect of losing some of it. As it happens, you know, we all went into defensive mode, and people like Craig got into the market of educating the community, especially the Hispanic community, about what we stand to gain and what we stand to lose. And all of those efforts were very effective. Well, then, guess what happens? You know, we produce so much domestic supply that now the price of oil has dropped so low that now that is jeopardizing the sector. So we have 2 to 3 of the companies with the largest invested assets in Colorado. Some of them are just our close neighbors to the north, and many of them are having to do layoffs and make other expenditure reductions. And we're really starting to feel it. So it's something that we feel strongly about protecting. We do believe that it's a vital part of our economy. We too won't support anything that isn't safe for the environment, safe for communities. We don't believe that it's a question between fracking or not fracking, but rather how do we frack safely so that we can have that resource and protect that portion of our economy. So we're aligned with people like Craig. We've got some significant energy company memberships. They're working very hard at reaching out and communicating and educating, and it's just been it's a really fruitful partnership for us.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And now we're going to open it up to questions, sir.
How much impact has our life program had here in New Mexico? For our out-of-town guests, you might want to, whoever has the video, explain what that is.
It is the low
home energy program, and it is funded by the federal government as well as the state, and the applicants are low income. There's a basis for when they qualify, and then they can come in for some of that money, and it's in New Mexico primarily used for heating during the heating season so that these people can get some additional funds to pay for their heating. In other states like Arizona, it's used for cooling. So the state will put in usually about $1 million or so. It just depends on what's available in the funding, and then it's the same with the federal government.
On that, the federal government gives to that program, with our tax dollars, about $500 million a year. And when you hear figures about fossil fuel subsidies, that the anti-fossil fuel crowd will say, well, the number that's bandied about is about $4 billion. Is it $4 billion or $400 billion? $4 billion a year in fossil fuel subsidies, and of that, 500 million is to LIHEAP. More than $1 billion goes to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and these are annual numbers, and almost $1 billion a year is for farm fuel tax exemptions. So we're looking, when you hear that number about, oh, the fossil fuel industry gets $4 billion a year in subsidies, realize that $2.5 billion of that have absolutely nothing to do really with the fossil fuel industry, and most of the rest of it is actually cost of doing business tax credits that every other industry gets as well.
Okay, sir?
Or can you speak up just a little bit more, please?
One of the things that for a number of years, we have a big gorilla in Nevada, which is not No. And one of the things that he has done is in the last 2 years, we have had a summit, energy, like some summit. Right now, it is from 2. I don't know if you've ever attended that summit.
I have not attended. I'm familiar with it. I watched Hillary Clinton's speech September 3rd in Las Vegas at the National Clean Energy Summit and pulled out of that what we can expect from her on energy policy. I can't expand on it. There is no such thing as clean coal when you look at it how it comes out of the ground. I mean, there are some coals that have higher ash content or higher sulfur content, but basically coal is coal. The difference is how it is burned, and we are using it more cleanly. We are burning coal more cleanly today. So in a way, Harry Reid is right. There's no such thing as clean coal. It's not a different product that comes out of the ground. It's the same product as it comes out of the ground, but the technologies have advanced and improved to the point that we're burning it so there's virtually no pollutants, tiny bit, no particulate matter. Mostly what you see coming out of the stacks if you go by a coal-fired power plant today is steam, and people mistake that for smoke and pollution. My mother lives in Las Vegas, by the way. I'd love to come speak for you there.
Just as a point of information, the Department of Energy does have a section called Clean Coal, and it's headed up by Dr. Julio Friedman, who's actually a very active member of Hispanics in Energy. And he is the world's foremost thinker around cleaning coal. There's still some issues because of carbon emissions, but the stuff that, the sulfur that makes the air dirty, all of that has been cleaned. The technology does exist. And he's a resource to China now because they are building a tremendous number of coal-fired plants and so.
Yeah, on that, let me just add, it's my understanding that the power plants China is building today are cleaner than anything we have in the United States, but mainly because we can't build anything. We can't build any new coal-fired power plants, but China is using that very advanced technology.
Right, because their people can't breathe the air. So.
Extreme environmentalist groups. I know that wind and solar are presently subsidized. Is it possible they don't understand how that will have to be integrated into the traditional fuel base load? And secondly, from an electrical utility standpoint, is it possible to be highly competitive in price for the consumers?
The environmentalists really don't care about how it's integrated, and they don't care about the fact that wind and solar is not available 24/7. Being competitive, we passed a law this year in the state legislature, and the governor signed it, that allows utility companies to negotiate rates with large customers, and this is mostly geared towards manufacturing. It will have oversight from the Public Regulation Commission. So consumers are protected in that, but it will help us be more competitive. It was the type of law that we needed at the time that Tesla was considering coming here. If we can bring in large manufacturers, we can, again, increase the number of jobs, and it will lessen the burden on all of us for our electricity production. And I need to tell you something very important. Something that I wanted to talk about earlier, but this is dealing with San Juan Generating Station, and all of you need to be very, very aware of this. I've got an op-ed that we'll start publishing around the state. The commission is due to make a decision on this plant very soon. Understanding that about 3 years ago, the EPA passed a rule for visibility. Had nothing to do with health, just visibility in the national parks. They came in and they shut down half of one of the plants that's on the Navajo reservation. And now they're looking at San Juan Generating Station, which is not on the reservation, it's on state land. Now, What that means is, and this was through negotiation, they wanted very expensive equipment. It would have cost $1 billion to comply. The state of New Mexico, the Environmental Department, negotiated along with PNM, who is the main owner and operator of that plant, with the EPA, and came to an agreement that they would shut down half of the plant, 2 of the units, leave 2 open, and retrofit those 2 with equipment that would clean the air. As Marita said earlier, American Lung Association just put out a report. Farmington, which is the biggest metro area near that plant, is second cleanest for particulate matter in the whole United States. We have a one-button response that you can, I've got cards, you can contact the Public Regulation Commission. When they make this decision, it is very difficult because what they are looking at right now is tinkering with this agreement. If there are changes made to the agreement, it isn't just a utility company involved, it's the EPA. We don't need the EPA to come back in here and renegotiate that agreement. This agreement would leave 2 of the plants open. The environmentalists want the entire thing shut down. That is our most economical source of electricity in the PNM service area, and there's other utilities that use it as well. 811 jobs are at stake, $40 million in royalties and taxes, and $150 million in other contracts that come out of that plant. This is a very urgent call to action, and I'm asking you, please, get involved and voice your opinion to the PRC. They need to hear from you. Those environmentalists are very active in wanting this entire plant shut down, and we need your help. Thank you.
One more question, unfortunately, so we have to wrap it up.
Mrs. Sontag, she keeps referencing PRC as it relates to the San Juan generating plant. Exactly how should we as individuals contact the PRC?
You can go to their website. It is nm, like New Mexico, prc.state.nm.us. And you want to reference case number 13-00390. 13-00390, or you can take my card and get on our website. We'll take you to a place where you can touch one button and send your opinion of support for this agreement directly to all 5 commissioners and their chief of staff.
And Carla, didn't the hearing officer say not to approve this?
He did. That's what they're dealing with. The hearing examiner has recommended that they not approve this agreement. If there is any tinkering or if they don't approve it, we're in trouble, people. We could lose that plant. That is our most economical source of electricity production in the state right now. This plan also brings more nuclear energy into base rates, which is a big win for New Mexico ratepayers because that is a clean source of energy and also very economical. There's a lot to the plan. You can read more about it on our website. But please, please, please express your opinion to the PRC. They need to hear from you because they're getting hundreds of letters from this activist group. And we'll talk more about that on July 1st at that summit, but we need to hear from you, please.
And we work closely with both Valerie Espinoza and with Nancy Montoya on the PRC. And so clearly getting engaged with the PRC is a tremendous step forward, not only for trade associations, but for individuals, because you can really impact some of the decisions that the PRC makes by getting engaged. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come into a close here, and I want to each one of our panel members to give you 1 minute of their thoughts of what's the next step now. So why don't we start with Marita?
Well, along with what Carla said, very important that we be engaged in these energy policies because they impact all business, all citizens, and the environmental movement that's pushing the more expensive wind and solar energy is definitely driving the national energy policy at this point. And so it's very important. As I mentioned, the poll numbers are on our side, but we need to be engaged.
Carlos?
Get involved. You know, there are so many wonderful organizations out there. Earlier, Deidre from the Hispanic Chamber in Denver was speaking. We created an organization called the Hispanic Community Energy Forum, where we bring together industry experts, representatives, community leaders, everyday folks to have a discussion about energy policy and responsible energy development. So that would be my suggestion is look out there and get involved, speak up, write letters to your electeds and just take part in the democratic process.
Carla?
Get involved. If you have an organization, you represent an organization, the New Mexico Business Coalition would love to partner with you on this issue when we do our Energy Summit, because we have got to raise the level of awareness of our side on this issue. We're too quiet. We understand a lot more about how energy works than the other side, but we're very quiet and we stay at our desk and we work and we try to make a living, and that's all well and good, but we've got to get very vocal and we need you. So if we can help you in some way, we would love to partner with you and get the word out to all of our people, because collectively, again, we've got to change the conversation so we control it and we're not controlled by it. Thank you.
And just as a point of information, New Mexico has a member in Congress, Ben Ray Lujan, who sits on the Energy Committee in the House. And so participating in legislative affairs and offering your opinions to people like him and the PRC. In Colorado, you have former Secretary of Interior Ken Salazar, who can also be given opinions. He's actively working in the energy space now. And so clearly these are individuals that in the Washington, D.C. dynamics are valuable resources that you have very close by. So, ladies and gentlemen, Hispanics in Energy was really pleased to be part of this very important dialogue that has a tremendous economic impact on our states, on the people that live in these states. And so we're very happy to be part of this. But more importantly, I want to recognize our tremendous experts up here, our panel members. And if you could please help me give them a warm applause for their contribution. And so thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you very much for being here, panel members.